Last month, Meghan Markle posted a story to her Instagram account. It took roughly 30 seconds to read. It was a formal letter from Ukraine's vice president expressing gratitude for an initiative. On the surface, it looked like a diplomatic, harmless, highly curated moment of global statesmanship, except the letter began with three very specific words printed clearly at the top of the page: Your Royal Highness. She uploaded this document completely unedited without a clarifying caption, straight to millions of followers. You might look at that and think nothing of it. She is married to a British prince, after all. But what looked like a small public moment was actually a devastating metaphor for commercial desperation, and quite possibly the final legal misstep of her career. To understand why this is a fatal error, you have to look at a document signed in January 2020 during the infamous Sandringham Summit. Meghan and Harry negotiated the terms of their royal exit with the late Queen Elizabeth. The agreement was meticulous and the terms were crystal clear. They would retain the Duke and Duchess of Sussex monikers, but they were expressly forbidden from using their His and Her Royal Highness titles, not publicly, not in diplomacy, and certainly not for commercial gain. That was the absolute baseline of the deal. They got to keep their dignity, walk away with a global platform, and in exchange, they would not monetize the highest tier of the monarchy's brand. Yet in April 2026, there it was, Your Royal Highness, proudly displayed on a commercial social media account that exists largely to funnel traffic to her lifestyle ventures. A source close to Prince William recently told the British press that you would have to be entirely naive to believe she did not know exactly what she was doing when she pressed publish. This is the story of how an empire unravels. What you are about to understand is why the events of the last 2 months have fundamentally shifted the royal narrative. This is no longer a story about hurt feelings, palace gossip, or familial estrangement. We are now dealing with contracts' legal boundaries and the staggering exposure of a moral contradiction. To feel the true weight of this collapse, we have to remember where she started. In May 2018, Meghan Markle was undeniably the most famous woman on the planet. When she walked down the aisle at St. George's Chapel, she possessed the cultural capital that billionaires could not buy. She represented modernization glamour and a progressive new era for a 1,000-year-old institution. She was untouchable. The public adored her, the press was captivated, and Hollywood executives saw a billion-dollar aura. Fast forward exactly 8 years to May 2026. The contrast is nothing short of a forensic study in public relations self-sabotage. The aura is entirely gone, replaced by an increasingly desperate scramble for relevance. Last month, quietly and without fanfare, her reported $20 million book deal with Penguin Random House was allowed to expire. Just weeks prior, in March 2026, Netflix officially terminated its partnership with their production company, Archewell. The platform that originally handed them a rumored $100 million deal walked away. Industry insiders described the internal consensus at Netflix with brutal brevity, stating simply that they were done with them. This followed Spotify's highly public exit, where an executive explicitly labeled the couple as frauds on his own podcast. This is not a string of bad luck. This is a definitive industry verdict. And this commercial freefall explains the sudden glaring reappearance of the Your Royal Highness title on an Instagram story. It is the tactical panic of a brand that has realized its foundational product has no independent market value. But to understand why the corporate world finally walked away, you have to look at the psychological pattern that built the Meghan Markle brand in the first place. Every global phenomenon needs an origin story. Meghan's was flawless. She told it everywhere. She was 11 years old watching television when a Procter & Gamble commercial aired, claiming that women all over America are fighting greasy pots and pans. Outraged by the sexism, she wrote letters to Hillary Clinton, to the company, and to powerful senators. According to the legend, she cultivated it, worked. The massive corporation altered the commercial, and Hillary Clinton personally wrote her back. A solitary 11-year-old girl took on corporate America and won. She leveraged this story brilliantly. She told it at the United Nations. She repeated it at the One Young World Summit. It was the centerpiece of her Vanity Fair profile. It was the absolute cornerstone of her identity as an empowered, lifelong feminist who breaks down systemic barriers. There was only one problem. When Vanity Fair's own fact-checkers began digging into the story, consulting advertising historians and reaching out to Procter & Gamble, the narrative began to disintegrate. They could find no conclusive evidence to support the grand claims. They found absolutely no proof that she ever received a reply from Hillary Clinton. No letter, no verified correspondence. Nothing. The most devastating blow to this origin story did not come from the British tabloids. It came from her own father. In a documentary, Thomas Markle clarified the reality of that famous crusade. He explained that the letter was actually a school assignment, a class project. It was not the solitary rebellion of a precocious activist. It was a child doing her homework. He admitted that over the years, the story had been, in his words, embellished. This is the psychological key to the entire Sussex operation. The foundation of her humanitarian brand was built on an embellished piece of homework, and once you recognize that the origin story was structurally unsound, the rest of the empire's collapse makes perfect, undeniable sense. The pattern of rewriting reality extended far beyond childhood anecdotes. It became the operating system of her royal tenure. She sat down with Oprah Winfrey and told a global audience of tens of millions that she was entirely unsupported. She painted a picture of a cruel, archaic institution that refused to protect her, positioning herself as the ultimate victim of a cold-blooded machine. But that narrative is directly contradicted by an incredibly uncomfortable mathematical reality. If she was the victim, why did 18 people walk out of her team in a span of just 6 years? 18 documented staff departures. These were not junior interns. These were seasoned professionals. Consider Samantha Cohen. She had spent 17 years working for the British royal family. She was one of the most respected, highly capable aides the institution possessed. She was brought in to be Meghan's private secretary, the most senior advisory role available, specifically to guide her through the complexities of royal life. Cohen was supposed to stay for 6 months. She ended up staying for 18, largely because the palace could not find anyone willing to replace her. When they finally did secure a replacement, they flew that person to Africa to train during a royal tour. That replacement quit midway through the tour. Cohen later confirmed she was one of 10 staff members formally interviewed during an independent bullying investigation funded privately by the late Queen when news of this investigation leaked. Meghan's immediate response was to release a statement calling it a calculated smear campaign. Think about the audacity of that phrasing. A smear campaign involving 10 independent witnesses, a seasoned royal courtier, and a replacement who could not survive 2 weeks on a different continent. It is the exact same strategy we saw with the Spotify executive, the Netflix executives, and the Vanity Fair fact-checkers. Whenever reality fails to align with the curated narrative of victimhood and empowerment, the other party is entirely at fault. But public relations strategies cannot alter legal contracts. And this is where the story shifts from a fascinating psychological study into a high-stakes legal crisis. Every single commercial venture Meghan Markle has launched since leaving the United Kingdom has relied on the royal proximity she claims to despise, the podcast, the docuseries, the lifestyle brand, the jam. All of it is anchored to the title of Duchess. But the title of Duchess of Sussex is not hers by birth. It is a courtesy title bestowed by the monarch through marriage. It exists strictly at the pleasure of the crown. By brazenly posting Your Royal Highness on a commercial platform, she has crossed a line that the monarchy cannot ignore. She has provided them with documented, undeniable proof of a breach of the Sandringham Agreement. Prince William has been watching this unfold with cold, calculated restraint, while the internet focused on family drama. The heir to the throne has been watching the contractual violations stack up. He knows that Netflix is gone. He knows Spotify is gone. He knows the publishing deals have evaporated. He knows that the only thing keeping the Sussex commercial entity alive is the unearned proximity to his family's legacy. And by pressing publish on that Ukraine letter, she didn't just post a careless Instagram story. She handed a future king the exact legal justification he needs to trigger a mechanism that will strip her of the only asset she has left. The process of stripping a royal title does not happen on a public stage. There will be no screaming match, no dramatic television interview, and no frantic exchange of press releases. When the British monarchy decides to act, it does so with terrifying bureaucratic silence. The mechanism is a formal document known as a letters patent or potentially an act of parliament, but whatever the exact legal route, the result is instantaneous. The word Duchess is removed. And with that single deletion, the entire foundation of Meghan Markle's commercial empire simply ceases to exist. To understand the sheer scale of the panic happening behind closed doors in Montecito right now, you have to look at the legal concept of material misrepresentation. For the last 6 years, every contract, every partnership, and every brand pitch was built on the implicit guarantee of the Sussex identity when you sign a multi-million-dollar agreement as the Duchess of Sussex. The corporate entity on the other side of that table is paying for the royal aura. They are paying for the proximity to the throne. If that title is formally revoked due to her own documented breaches of the Sandringham Agreement, those commercial contracts face an immediate existential crisis. Lawyers do not view the loss of a title as a sad family dispute. They view it as a failure to deliver the primary asset of a binding agreement. You cannot legally monetize an identity you no longer hold. This is the devastating reality that follows the loss of Netflix, Spotify, and Penguin Random House. When the title disappears, there is no rebrand that can save a lifestyle company that was fundamentally anchored to the illusion of royal status. This is where we must examine the most profound contrast in this entire story. It is the permanent, unbridgeable divide between Prince Harry's reality and Meghan's reality. Whatever William decides to do, whatever legal mechanisms are deployed, Harry retains a floor. He was born a prince. He is the son of a king, the brother of a future king, and a man whose existence is permanently recorded in the history of a nation. Even if every title is stripped, he remains Prince Harry. He has an inherent biological safety net. Meghan does not. Meghan was born Meghan Rachel Markle in Los Angeles. The title she relies on is entirely conditional. It is a courtesy extended by the crown, loaned to her through marriage. Without it, she does not become a diminished version of a royal. She becomes Meghan Mountbatten Windsor, a woman sitting in California with a string of cancelled media contracts and a lifestyle brand that no one is quite sure how to pronounce. Unlike Harry, she has no floor to land on, and that is a terrifying psychological space to inhabit for someone who has spent her entire adult life curating an image of absolute control. The anxiety of this realization is starting to bleed into the public sphere through subtle visual signals. You can see it in the way she now navigates high-profile events. Think back to the golden era of 2018 where she commanded every room she entered, flanked by elite royal protection with global dignitaries hanging onto her every word. Now look at the recent red carpet appearances, the forced, rigid smiles, the moments where she is gently but firmly ushered along by low-level event staff, the untouched glasses of champagne at VIP tables where A-list celebrities deliberately avoid eye contact to ensure they are not photographed in her proximity. These are not random coincidences. In the highest echelons of Hollywood, proximity is currency. And right now, the industry has collectively decided that the Sussex brand is a depreciating asset. The Hollywood elite observed the Spotify executive calling them frauds. They watched the Netflix deal evaporate. They saw the sheer commercial desperation of launching a jam company precisely when the Princess of Wales was dominating global news for deeply personal reasons. The entertainment industry does not operate on loyalty, it operates on momentum, and the momentum has definitively shifted. But the most devastating aspect of this unraveling is not the loss of corporate deals, it is the staggering isolation. Meghan Markle is now a woman without a country, without a functioning extended family, and increasingly without the inner circle that once protected her. She is entirely estranged from the Markle family, she is entirely estranged from the Windsor family. And what happened to the chosen family? The people who stood by her before the royal wedding. Nanaki Pretty, her best friend of 30 years, discarded without a word. Jessica Mulroney, her closest confidant who styled her for royal tours, cut off the moment she became a public relations liability. The 18 staffers who walked out the door in London, the pattern is unbroken. She deployed the shutdown mechanism on everyone who was no longer useful to her carefully constructed narrative. But when you cut ties with everyone who knew you before you had power, you are left completely alone when that power is taken away. The weaponization of victimhood is a brilliant short-term strategy. It gets you the Oprah interview. It gets you the initial wave of global sympathy. But it is a terrible long-term business model. Eventually, the public realizes that if everyone around you is the villain, perhaps the common denominator is not the institution but the individual. This is why her story resonates so deeply and why it commands such intense, sustained public fascination. It is not just about royalty. It is a modern morality play about the illusion of power and the brutal consequences of hubris. It is about a woman who believed she could outsmart a 1,000-year-old institution using the shallow, reactionary tactics of a California public relations firm. She fundamentally misunderstood what the monarchy actually is. The British Crown is not a celebrity management agency. It is an institution built on duty stoicism and generational survival. It outlasted empires, it survived world wars, and it certainly knows how to handle a disgruntled former actress posting passive-aggressive diplomatic letters on Instagram When the final move is made, it will not look like revenge, it will look like housekeeping. King William will not need to give an interview explaining his feelings. He will simply allow the bureaucratic machinery of the state to formalize what the public already knows. The agreement was broken, the titles were monetized, the line was crossed, and so the titles are removed. It is the ultimate application of the exact same shutdown mechanism she has used on so many others throughout her life. Clean cold total. No negotiation, no appeal, no dramatic final confrontation. Just official permanent silence where the word Duchess used to be. When you strip away the designer clothes, the empty podcast studios, and the expired publishing deals, you are left with a very simple, profoundly uncomfortable question. If the humanitarian origin story was an embellished class project, and the royal identity was a borrowed title she ultimately lost, and the feminist empire collapsed the moment it had to produce actual work, what is left? Who is Meghan Markle when there is no one left to blame? I want to hear your forensic analysis on this. Do you think the permanent removal of the title is the only way to end this commercial exploitation? Or has the brand already destroyed itself to the point where the title no longer matters? Drop your precise thoughts in the comments below.